Hey guys, welcome back to the Accurate Perspective podcast. Tonight is episode 5, and we have my good friend Scott Brumback. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
I'm
Lindsay?
doing well. And Lindsay. Dave is
Hi.
not here. He is sick. That or he is faking sick. I don't know, but he says he's sick. So if you see Dave, though, everybody, give him a hard time. Let him know that he's missed on the show 2 nights in a row. Actually, no, he's missed 2 episodes this week. So, but he'll be back with us hopefully tomorrow night after he gets some rest. So tonight we're going to go keep you guys posted on what's happening in filing week, and also talk with Scott with judges. So let's dive right into the updates from today. Lindsay?
Alrighty, so not a lot of changes so far today. We had the county coroner, we had Jim Curtis file, which we kind of figured would be happening. So that's an update. And the other one is we had another county clerk file, and that is Deborah Delatorre. So now we have 3 for county clerk. And then the other pretty big update is the PCOs. We're now up to 124 Republican PCOs, which is 57 more than yesterday. And the Democrat PCOs are up to 10. So that's 2 additional from yesterday. So a lot of filings for PCO in the last 24 hours. So that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else is the same.
And we still don't have any Democrats running for any of the other county races right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. All the Republicans right now are running unopposed. And Gina Mossbroker said last night that typically Democrats file at the last hour. I'm kind of surprised because they sued for redistricting the county, and yet they're not running for the county. So if you guys are watching the show, where are you guys at? Let's go. Come on. Let's see where you're at. So anyways, and Jim Curtis, so he is the incumbent for coroner. He's the guy who has been doing this job. It'll be an interesting one between the 2 of them, Marshall and Jim. And we don't have a third. Again, that's good because you kind of have to have some sort of expertise to be a coroner. I was actually talking to a guy today, and he was telling me, he said, "Do you think I could run for coroner?" I said, "No." No, you can't. He said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Well, you don't work with dead bodies, man. You have no skill set for that world." And he's like, "Well, I could just hire it out like a business. I could hire Jim or Marshall." And I said, "No, that's not going to work in this case." So, no, there are very specific roles for these guys. And then, the big PCO update. I think that's pretty massive. 50, what'd you say, 57?
I think it was 57, somewhere around there from yesterday. So almost doubled in the past day.
Yeah, which means they've almost filled all their seats, which is pretty remarkable because I don't think right now, I think the Republicans only have filled about 109 seats. So they're actually up about another 10 or 15 than they are currently. So that's awesome. People are getting engaged.
But there's still 50 available. So if someone's still interested, you have till tomorrow. So
yep,
let's
4
fill 'em
p.m.
up.
tomorrow. Yeah, don't wait around. And Democrats, you guys have a lot available, so you could fill them up real quick. So don't wait, get them done. Well, let's dive into the judges' races. So we have district court races happening. And Scott, what can you tell me about these guys?
Well, there's only one contested race so far. Gary Hensey was appointed to fill the position of Kevin Roy, who was basically the presiding judge in district court. And so maybe people don't know, district court is in the county courthouse. It's a countywide jurisdiction. It's a limited jurisdiction court that deals with certain crimes like DUIs, reckless driving, domestic violence, etc. I used to be a prosecutor in that court way back when. In fact, one of the judges, Al Schweppe, was a colleague of mine, and I believe Brian Sanderson was. Mr. Engel was a defense attorney. All these guys I've known for years. They're good people. They're honest. They process a huge amount of cases. And for instance, like Al Schweppe, he and I are about the same age. He served in the Army. His dad was either a World War II or Korean War vet. I can't remember. VFW. Al himself served in Korea. He qualifies for the VFW. I don't know if he's a member or not. And the reason I mention that is these are sorts of the profiles that you want to look at for judges, because a lot of the issues, and not so much in district court, because they don't really deal a lot with the bigger issues that you're going to deal with in Superior Court. And when I say bigger issues, the ones that are kind of hitting us right now in this state, which is driven by a far left, essentially, quasi-dictatorial governor and his little henchman, Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General. And they like to, dispense with our constitutionally protected rights by fiat. And if they can, whatever way that they can, they're gonna try to do that, in my opinion. They don't have respect for the Constitution they're sworn to protect. And so in district court, you're not going to really get into too much of that. Most of these judges, I think, are fine. I did, however, have an interaction with the district court a couple of years ago. You remember 1639.
Yeah.
And I had a real issue with Bob Ferguson being involved in the creation of 1639. And in fact, I thought it was so egregious that it violated a criminal statute, which was 9A 80010 is official misconduct. When you are a person acting under color of law and trying to deprive somebody of a constitutional right, a constitutionally protected right, that's a crime. And it's a misdemeanor. And it fell within the jurisdiction of the district court. Now, that action and that effort, which was driven by citizens because we didn't have law enforcement that was willing to step up, in itself engaged in the process of holding the Attorney General accountable for what he was doing. The citizens did, and there was this thing called a citizen complaint process that I was familiar with because I was a prosecutor way back when, and I used to handle civil complaints or citizen complaints. And so citizens would come into me and say, hey, this happened or that happened. I would listen to them, see if there was a criminal action that had happened. And then I'd have them swear out a complaint and take it in front of the court. And sometimes there would be a prosecution. In fact, I probably did, I don't know, around 50 such prosecutions. So I was familiar with the process. And we did that with regard to Ferguson. Brought it in Yakima County, brought it in Ferry County, Kittitas County, and Stevens County. And all the judges basically have punted on it. There was some real deliberation on those things, but those judges do from time to time deal with these issues that are important. But most of the time they're processing violation of protection order, DUIs, those sorts of things. And, so they're not, dealing with a lot of the issues that, we're kind of focused on right now, that are under assault, our constitutional rights.
Do they deal with any criminal cases, shootings, stuff like that, or?
Who's that? The district court judges?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're all criminal cases, essentially, that they deal with. There is a civil aspect to what they do. It's rarely used. I mean, so you have civil, which is citizen against citizen with some sort of complaint for money damages or an injunction or some sort of protective order or something like that. Most of what the district court judges do are criminal cases. They send people to jail. In fact, it was when I was a prosecutor in district court, I used to kind of laugh because we'd get more jail time in district court than you'd see in felonies, because in Superior Court, a lot of times they'd have what's called the Sentencing Reform Act, where the legislature had limited what the judges could do, which I thought was completely unconstitutional in my opinion, the judges should have the freedom to address the crime as it suits the community within the parameters of the, criminal statute. But to say that judges, you can't do this, I thought was a violation of, and I do believe, of separation of powers. But that's what we live with. In district court, there's no such restriction. There is not a Sentencing Reform Act. And so, when problems in the community are such that they need to be addressed, that's when you want judges to be able to turn up the heat and say, hey, listen, stop this stuff. We're sending you to jail, and you try to deter conduct.
Right. I mean, that's,
Scott, you had said,
go for it.
Sorry, real quick, Matt. You had said that, some of the case you had brought up in different counties that the judges basically punted the case and didn't want to take it on. Is that just a personal choice judges can make? Why would one take that on while others wouldn't? It's just their own discretion.
It was very novel. I mean, what I was essentially, or citizens were essentially, and not me. I mean, I was in Yakima County because I'm a citizen of Yakima County. I wasn't appearing as an attorney in that action. I was appearing as a citizen. And I filed an affidavit, but we were asking the courts to basically order the prosecuting attorney to file a criminal complaint against the Washington State Attorney General for violating his oath by trying to, basically remove constitutionally protected rights, impairing the rights of citizens to keep and bear arms. As protected under the Washington Constitution, which is fantastic. We have a great Constitution in the state of Washington, by the way.
Yeah.
The problem is that we have a legal culture that has drifted from it. And the culture of the law has incrementally over time, just like we've seen in so many other ways, that Alito kind of confronted not long ago, right? Or at least we've seen in his potential order on the abortion issue, is that we've drifted so far away from the original intent of either our state or our federal constitution that it's hard for us to even recognize ourselves for what we originally were. And that is a very fundamental concept is, number one, our rights are given to us by God. Okay? It's in the preamble of the Washington State Constitution. That is not taught, and it's not taught for reason, because they don't want people to understand that. But it's in the preamble. It's the doorway to the Constitution. And then Article 1, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution says that all political power is inherent in the people, and basically that government exists with the primary purpose of protecting our God-given liberties. That government's for. Not to control us, not to hurt us, not to tell us we can't drive a car because the gas is, is yucky, as our governor said. Mm-hmm. It's to protect our liberties. And we've drifted so many years away from these original concepts that there's such a big difference between how we are now and what our Constitution says we're supposed to be. And that's, I think we're seeing a reaction now. That's why Alito, who has guts, is back to the Constitution. Okay. And that's what, I'm not a fan of Gorsuch. He's weak, and Kavanaugh's weak, and ACB is weak, but Thomas is pretty good. And Alito's pretty good. And Roberts, as we know, it's not a real strong court, but when you got principle, so I know I'm getting far from where the district court is, but there are sometimes issues that come before them that are big, and that action against potentially Bob Ferguson, who was just awful in what he was doing to our right to bear arms, playing both sides of the game.
Yeah. So Scott, how many positions are in district court?
I think there's 4 judges. I mean, whoever's there. There's Al Schweppe, there's Don Engel, There's Brian Sanderson. I know all these guys. And they're like I said, they're good people. And then there was Kevin Roy, and I think there might be a commissioner there as well, who is not a judge, but acts as a judge under the direction of the judges. So I think there's 5 essentially judges. But and the commissioner always gets the job kind of that nobody else wants to do. But that's, they're not elected. They don't have to go through elections. And, they serve at the pleasure of the district court judges.
Yeah. So the other piece of this is, this is kind of getting outside of Yakima here, but there's also some Supreme Court of our state judges, 1, 5, and 6 are up. What do you know about these 3?
We're in Washington State, man.
They're your favorite, right?
Read their opinions. It blows your mind. It's social justice warrior hour. Your hope is to focus on local elections as a citizen. And we're talking about what should citizens do and what can they do. It looks like most of the district court judges are going to be unopposed. Gary Hinsey is being opposed by Wes Gano. I know all these guys. I worked with Gary. He and I were prosecutors together. I've known him for years. I've known Wes as well. He's a private attorney. He's practiced for years. Both of them good guys. I don't know Wes as well as I know Gary. I know Gary is a patriot. Gary's the kind of guy when you're at an event and he likes to talk about the philosophy of the law, which I enjoy. I love the law and the philosophy of the law and what's just and what's right and what's, our oath demand of us to do and those sorts of things. And Gary talks about those things. I'm not saying Wes won't, but I think what the citizens need to do is talk to these guys, have forums and ask certain questions, And I know that when we were talking before, there were some questions. I've always had certain questions because people go, judges, they never really say what, they're going to do or who they are. It's kind of hide the ball. And I'm like, you got to know what questions to ask. And it's not people's fault. And there are judicial ethics. There are campaign laws with regard to judges that prohibit them from saying how they are going to decide on a case and things like that. But you can find out about who they are personally. The thing that should not happen with a judge is that they get to just skate on through without you knowing who they are. Okay. You have a right as a citizen, as a voter, to know who they are and who you're voting for. Yes. What's their judicial philosophy, for instance? Most people give you a garbled BS. They're lawyers, right? So they know how to answer questions. But ask them, who's your favorite Supreme Court justice? Like if somebody asked me, I'd say Antonin Scalia. Now, do I agree with Antonin Scalia on everything? No, but I love the guy, and he was a constitutionalist, and he was a passionate man for the Constitution. Loved him. Okay. But if somebody says Ginsburg, you got yourself a lefty. Okay. Now, but they have to answer your questions, and I think
that might fit some voters, right? That might be what they want.
It could be. It could be, but people go into forums and they know, who their audience is. Right. So, if they're at your event, they might say somebody a little more moderate than if they're at, one of the lefty events. They're going to say, Ginsburg. Right. And then that's what they'll say. Who ironically was a very close friend of Scalia, right? So that's one of the questions that'll tell you right away, just who is it, and why? Why is that person your favorite one? I think a smart person would probably say, some Supreme Court justice that nobody knows, or Brennan, who's from, I'm trying to think of our Supreme Court justice here from Yakima. Jeremy Defoe is going to kick me in the butt, but Uh, there's a statue at Davis. I'm just passing on his name right now, but he was the longest serving Supreme Court justice, I believe. But
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be nonpartisan, though, right? I mean, could they just I don't want to answer that because they don't want to ever kind of show that they lean one way or the other? Would that be an appropriate answer to that question, or would they?
Well, they can answer whatever they want. They're not obligated to answer anything. Partisanship means, political parties.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really to get into partisanship and say, I've been a lifelong Republican, I've been a lifelong Democrat, I believe in progressiveness or whatever.
Right.
That's not who's your favorite Supreme Court justice is not that. This is about what's your philosophy. And this, and I think citizens need to learn to be strong too. Don't let them get away with a wimpy answer. You hold these people are public servants, even the ones in robes. They work for us, and that I can't stand it. And no offense, man, but this idea of officials and leaders in government. No, you're public servants. Okay, right. And we need to remember that. And controlling the narrative is very important. That when those candidates for judicial office step before a crowd of citizens and speak and ask for their vote, they need to do it humbly and with respect to the leaders, the true leaders in that room, and that is the people. That's my belief, and I believe that's what our founders intended. More questions, all right?
Yeah.
That one's an easy one. There's three of them basically that I've come up with that I think people should ask. Who's your favorite founding father and why? Today, there's, I've been following politics for a long time, and the left is very troublesome right now. I detect, this is my opinion, that the left really has a problem with this country, the founding of this country, the Constitution of this country, the Christian basis of this country, and it's all under attack. And for some of them, their heads will explode if they have to be pinned down on what their opinion is on somebody like George Washington, or Thomas Jefferson, and what their opinion is now. The left, now this is not JFK Democrats. JFK was an American patriot, in my opinion. All right. He served in World War II. All right. He would be a conservative Republican today. All right. These Democrats now that I'm talking about, leftists, progressives, these are people that don't like this country. All right. They don't like it. And they want to see it fundamentally transformed. Remember who said that.
What's your third question? That's a good one.
Question. Yeah, the founding father and why. Why?
Yeah, why?
And make them explain. And then the last question, if their head hasn't exploded yet, the last one's going to make it explode. And what firearms do you own? Okay. If they don't own any, they're probably a leftist. Okay. Or a felon. They can't be a judge. All right.
Or a felon.
They do own some. And I know some of I know most of the judges. There's a lot of decent people there. And I know one of the judges, she is a cowgirl from either Montana or Wyoming. I can't remember, and she kicked my butt. But, loves the 30-30 Winchester. She carries, on her hip. She understands fire and firearms. I want, just so you know, that constitutionally protected right to bear arms is probably it's the canary in the coal mine right to me, because the other rights are, you can't take away my right to worship. It's impossible for anybody to do that, right?
Yeah.
with Matthew 6, go in the closet and pray, right?
Right.
Free speech, you have to kill me to stop me from talking. So you're not gonna be able to. But the right to bear arms is such an easy, simple right that it really frustrates the heck out of people who dislike this country and the founding, because it's right there. It's a firearm. It's possessed by a citizen for his or her defense of their family, the community, of their family. And so the left is forever frustrated in trying to take that right from us. And so it's my favorite one to talk about. It is because, and I'm not a gun nut or anything like that. I mean, I don't shoot probably but once every couple months, but it's the one that frustrates them because they don't know how to deal with it. And so with these firearms, ask them if you've got one. And I tell you what, some of these people who are running for office are liberated to say, because they're wanting to say, hey, vote for me. I know that judges that have said, I own an AR. If they own an AR, bing, there's a check mark by that person. Probably loves
so
the Constitution. And these questions, are going to frustrate. You're going to see, like, who is it? Liz Halleck. If she were running for judge, she would just, these lefties, they can't stand, that right. And so, they might say, I don't want to answer that question. It's like, okay, I know who you are.
What if they said they had a BB gun?
Well,
Does that count as a firearm? Does that satisfy?
If you're a kid, yeah.
Right.
Or
it's an interesting thought, because I've talked to a couple judge candidates over the years. Actually, one was Bronson Fowle, and I had no idea what to ask him. I'm like sitting there going, "Are you a Republican?" Well, I can't really, I can't go down that road. And I said, okay, sure do. I don't know what to ask you then. It's good to meet you. You seem like a good guy. You want to go get lunch? So these are good.
Jay Inslee used to be a state rep and our congressman here. And then they had an initiative during the Clinton administration to ban assault weapons. And he supported it. And we booted his butt out of here, and he's never been welcome since. Okay, this area loves firearms and the constitutionally protected right to bear arms. It is a great thing to talk about with people who are running for office. Yeah. It's a great way to find out who they are quickly. And, you're going to know. And these, once they're in as judges, they're going to, and let's be honest, most of the job that the judges do, it doesn't deal with this stuff. They're processing cases. They're, doing, at least from a lawyer's perspective, mundane things. But you know what? These same questions, if you're hiring a lawyer and you've got a choice between different people, these questions apply too. Who are you going to give your money to? All right. Because lawyers then turn around and they engage in political causes as well. Many of these lawyers are very politically active. So you can have somebody that is a constitutionalist, loves their country, hires an attorney who works, unbeknownst to the client, totally against their interests. That's crazy, right? Why would you hire somebody who doesn't, address, your interests? You should be aligned to the best that you can. Now, there are some really good lawyers who I wouldn't agree with politically, and they might be the choice, but they also might not be the choice. And between the two, I'm going to take the one that's aligned with the Constitution.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always thought about it with judges is trying to figure that out. But with attorneys, I mean, you don't ever really call an attorney until you're like either in trouble, right?
Yeah.
You're in trouble, or you're trying to fight someone, right? Because they've done something, they've wronged you somehow. You're needing to sue them for something, and then it's always, I feel like you either gonna win, and it's like you've hired this attorney that is going to get you the win, or they're at least gonna, they're gonna fight with you, right? Like they're going to go toe to toe. And then there's some where you're like, dude, I don't even know. I have no idea. I'm spending a lot of money on this person, hoping they're going to be, nonpartisan, non-engaging on how hopefully they'll actually be, what's the word? Impartial, right?
I think most attorneys, well, I know not all the attorneys here, but most attorneys, they put that stuff aside. I mean, I know I do. I have clients who are far leftists, and it doesn't change one bit how I represent them. That would be dishonorable to do otherwise. And so even and I would say most attorneys either are middle to the left, because that's the nature of law school and the legal culture now. It's very left pushing for attorneys. I mean, to fit into the culture of it, nobody wants to be an outcast. You have to be an extraordinarily strong person to stand up against the tide.
Right.
But most, I can think, I've referred people to attorneys who are just right fit, and they're leftist attorneys, but they're honest. So.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, we've been talking a lot about parents in the last, few episodes. Parents are mad. They're frustrated with schools. They're frustrated with, the federal government. They're frustrated with the local government. I mean, I've seen a lot of school board meetings turn real heated in the last. I actually was in one of those school board meetings, going, "Oh man, what am I sitting in right now?" And one of the things that I think are frustrating parents is that our federal government has started to label parents as domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
And they've even set up, the FBI has even set up like a whole task force actually trying to identify who these folks are across the country. And when you actually look at what a definition of a domestic terrorist is, I don't believe that fits our parents who are trying to be politically activated for their children. So what is the definition in your mind of a domestic terrorist?
Well, domestic means within the homeland, and terrorist means somebody who engages in terrorism. That is, acts of, it could be violence or intimidation to try to reach a certain result, a political, it could be a religious result. There can be, domestic terrorism, with a religious aspect to it. I mean, you can look at some of the issues we've had over the past 30 years or so, with the religious aspect to it. So it's to create terror, which means that people are scared, and it creates, disrupts tranquility within communities. And that's what terrorism is. It's a psychological attack foremost. Yes, there may be a physical component to it, but it's psychological. That's what terrorism is. And in fact, that used to be one of my jobs in the Army. I was a domestic operations attorney at the United States Northern Command in Colorado Springs, where Cheyenne Mountain is and all that stuff. I used to work in there, and that's what my job was, to look at this stuff. And so when I see this stuff with Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice and what's going on with this stuff, it's highly politicized. I haven't seen too much with regard to the military aspect of it, but in the civilian realm, and that is the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, it's politicized, and it's horrible because the rule of law is being undermined. That's what's happening right now. The Army, where I worked, in that kind of aligned with that, because the military has a different role in that, but they have to keep track of it, because if terrorism has the effect that it is, great enough, then it disrupts the society so that the military has to do something. And that's the reason that the U.S. military was involved in that. But you have, a attorney general in the United States, Garland, who was thwarted as, Obama's nomination for the Supreme Court at the end of his term. You remember that? And now he is the attorney general. The politicization of what's going on legally. It's horrible. The rule of law has been severely undermined. I think anybody can see that. It's a power struggle between these different, Republicans, Democrats, kind of a thing, and it's terrible. The rule of law should be blind to that.
Yeah, that's been one of the things that, as we've been asking candidates who have been on here, like last time we asked Gina, who is the primary stakeholder in your children's education and their upbringing, and it's one of those questions where, like what you're asking judges, I'm going, man, that's what I'm telling people to ask candidates, going, I want to know, because if they go, I go, well, okay, well, they obviously don't believe it's you, parents. And that might be what you want them to think, right? If you're on the other side, you go, that's exactly who I want to elect, right? That's that person. I don't want parents, the primary stakeholders, but then, the other side's like, dang it, no, this is why we're having education problems. This is why, because parents aren't at the table. So it's an interesting, again, going back to your questions, I just thought I'd share that with folks at home, is like, you guys are going to be inundated with candidates wanting your money, right? They want you to donate to them. They want your time and your talent. And I'm like, you need to ask them some hard questions before you start just helping and doing those things. We've gone too long not asking those hard questions.
It's a job interview. They work for us. Once you have that mentality, you got to still be nice, just a decent person, but insist that they answer the question. If they don't, they fail the interview.
Yeah.
Next person, Now, some of these races aren't uncontested. So there's the other issue of citizens stepping up and engaging the system and running for office, because if you don't have any choices to begin with, what's the point?
Right. I asked a candidate that a couple weeks ago, I won't name her on here, but I asked that question, and she said, well, what does that matter? And I said, thank you. And I just kept walking. And it was a Republican, mind you. So I want people to understand, this is not a all left mentality. This is a both sides of the aisle thing. That, we sat this last year at the legislature. There was a group that tried to pass a bill recognizing parents as the primary stakeholders. And it wasn't the Democrats. It wasn't the Democrats it wasn't the Democrats who killed it. It was actually the leadership of the Republican Party who killed it at the top. And it was their lawyer who said this goes against fundamental Washington policy. And this is not the Democrat. This was the GOP. And so, anyways, I just say, like, these are those type of questions that cut through the nonsense and really get to the core of who these people are. That's why we do this show, right? It's to give you guys that ammo as you go out and try to figure out where you're going to put your vote at this year and how you're going to be politically involved. So, thank you, Scott, for joining us tonight. We've really appreciated your insight. Like, I didn't know there was 4 seats on the district judges there. I just keep seeing numbers on judges, and I go, there just must be like 20 or 30. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, can I just a summary really quick. So if it's a Supreme Court judge, then we should read their opinions, I think is what you called them, Scott. Like you can read opinions that they've had. But if it's district, like here locally, we want to ask the questions: who's your favorite founding father? Who's your favorite Supreme Court justice? And how many firearms do you have? Like, did we get that right? Is that the take-home message here? This is good.
Do you own firearms? Do you own firearms? I wouldn't get into like, how many firearms do you have in your house? I wouldn't do that. I mean, we're Americans. Okay. It's like, one of the things about us is that we fought, a revolution, with firearms.
Okay, so do you, not how many. Got it. Okay.
That's right. And if you do, what do you got? Just talk to them. These are normal people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them want to connect with people. They're just really afraid because they're running for judicial office. What can I, So these are benign questions. Do you own a firearm is not something they can't answer. It's something that will make somebody who doesn't like firearms very uncomfortable, and you'll be able to see it and you'll know who they are. That's the point of the question.
I can't wait to ask these. Matt, are you so excited to meet a judge and ask these questions?
Yeah, I wish I had these at the last election, because there was a few judges that I was like, I have no idea what to tell you. So,
right.
So yeah.
If they come in wearing Birkenstocks, you probably don't even have to ask the question. But,
oh gosh.
I think
that's the fourth.
We got to use humor on them. We got to use humor on them. We're way funnier than they are. They're so uptight about everything. They want to drop to their knees and scream, Donald Trump, they freak out, and we're like, hey, have a beer and whatever. Hey, do you like the Constitution? I love it. Tell me about it, and then we're just normal people. That's what we're doing. We're just trying to figure out who you are. That's it.
Yeah. So, Scott, you're a VFW. You're part of the VFW,
yep.
Right? Tell us quickly why folks should join the VFW. I'm giving a little shout out to the VFW today.
Yeah, the VFW is a great organization. First of all, if a veteran, or when a veteran passes away, we all pass away, there's a funeral team that supports that, and it's very meaningful to the family, and it's a connection with the past. We're patriots, right? We are connected to our founders. I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, okay, for a reason, because I'm connected to my heritage. I love this country. I have no other country that I want to be in except for this one, and the VFW supports this country. And then there's veterans who are disabled or they're injured or they have problems. The VFW helps them with those sorts of things. It's a great place for people to connect. But then there's also lobbying in Congress and whatnot. And so we want this organization, which has a mission of being patriotic organization, to support patriotism too. And that's something that the new commander, Steve Saunders, is working on, is patriotism. And so, the benefit of what the left is doing to try to bring this country down, and some will deny that that's happening. I say BS. You're too much in the open now. You're trying to bring it down. I know it. And so the good thing is that they're making people make a choice to really stand up for the country. And just be honest, there's nothing to be ashamed about standing up for your country and being bold about it. I know that if whoever listens to what this is here, and they're in the legal profession, they're going to go, oh my God, he shouldn't be saying that. I'm like, why? I didn't see anything that's untrue.
Right.
And if you're silent or you don't speak up, then wrongs continue on. The only way that wrongs stop happening is when people confront them. And people who know me, I don't like what's going on with this country. It's being taken down. And I'd rather do it in a nice, friendly discussion manner. Okay. But they are not going to win, period. They're not. It ain't happening. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it, discuss it, and deal with it. All right. And that's what I'm about.
So the VFW on Friday has, don't they have stuff going on there?
Well, they have a good prime rib dinner.
Yeah.
And they have a band and stuff like that. They have things going on all the time.
Like Beer Friday. Is that a thing? Every Friday?
It's fun.
You know, there's some restrictions. The main thing is that if you're a veteran and you're qualified, you've served overseas in a combat theater, then you qualify. So, you know, like me, I served in Korea. You know, if you were in the Gulf War, if you were in Vietnam, we still have a Korean War vet. He's a friend of mine. He's in his 90s. He's there. You know, all Iraq, Afghanistan, there's a whole list of qualifiers. So folks should apply if they can.
Yeah, definitely apply, guys. It's down over by Davis High School, down on Fifth Avenue.
That's right.
And you know, I've been hanging out down there a lot the last couple months, and they're great. I had a burger down there that was killer, and the company is great. The atmosphere is great, and you know, it's a vet, a VFW down there, and connect with folks because you need it. You need to connect with folks.
That's right.
Well, thank you again, Scott. Wrap up. And guys, I want to tell you a little bit about our sponsors. They're not paid sponsor, just a sponsor. And that's Center for Self-Governance. And they have the 21st century political leadership training that if you're looking to get involved, you're looking to try to figure out what the heck is going on and how do I actually fight? How do I do something? Go to their website. They have classes happening. They have a bunch of online classes actually scheduled throughout the end of this month. So connect and join in. They're going to have some in-person ones throughout the state in June. So get on there, get those classes taken care of. You know, again, this is not a paid advertisement. This is just because I think they're doing a killer job. So also, if you want to find us, you know, we're on Patreon to help support the show. If you look up Accurate Perspective, we have different tiers. I'm going to keep propping up the biggest tier, which is the $40 plus a month. That just gets you to come hang out with us at a lunch paid, man. You get to come eat lunch with us and help us craft some of the show topics and different stuff, get to meet us. And, you know, it helps keep the show rolling. The other piece of that is we're on every podcast catcher out there. So Apple, Spotify, Google, Anchor. So share it with your friends, subscribe, and we'll be back tomorrow for the last day of filing. We're excited. We are super excited for this week to be done. You know, the political nerds in us is finally, we're like, okay, we're a little tired, but we're ready for filing week to be over. Tomorrow should be a big hurrah. We'll see where we're at, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.